Hello! I would like to welcome you to the Laramie K Optician Works Training Center, where today we continue our series on dispensing. We start measurements, and why don't we just get going with the customer PD. All right, last time we got together, Kansi, the customer, had made her final decision on her frame. I have carefully entered that information on her work order. I've got a Deutsch DZ803 in a 4819 with a color of 46. We're going to be doing a simple single vision job. So the next logical thing that we would do is get her pupillary distance, or in other words, her PD. And to do that, we are going to use the corneal reflex pupillometer, or the pupillometer. Much easier to call it that. This is, as I mentioned, where things change a little bit. Our communication, our interactions change a little bit. We're going to get really close to each other.
He's nice, bit of a close talker.
A what?
You'll see.
And, it's probably just a good time to just kind of just relax a little, because we're going to be here for a little while. I want to put your customer at ease. This is what I said a million times. Would you take your glasses off for me, please? I'm going to take a measurement from your eyes. I'm going to sit this on your nose. This is going to rest against your forehead. And inside here is a target. It's white and green. I need you to stare at the green dot for me. Would you scoot on in for me? Perfect. All right, we're going to do that a couple of times so you get set in your head. Now, what I'm doing while I'm talking to her and getting that set up is I'm making sure that my thumb guides here are all the way out, all the way, let's say temporal, if you will, almost, right? I'm going to make sure it's on. There, it's on, right? It's got a display here. The batteries aren't dead. That would be a little awkward.
Get
another one, you moron.
Sometimes that happens. You want to check them once in a while. I'm making sure that my distance is set at infinity. It's really up to you how you decide you want to handle that. Where I worked, we always either hot glued or siliconed that in the infinity only position. The reasoning being, I would much rather always have an accurate monocular PD for progressives, which of course are very expensive and very sensitive to PD and horizontal and vertical movement. Rather have that on than have some kind of weird intermediate thing that's a little bit off, because you start having, moving this thing around. So just my take on it, leave it on infinity. I'm going to take a measurement from your eyes. I'm going to set this on your nose. This is going to lean against your forehead, and there's a target inside. You have to know what that target looks like. Not every pupillometer is the same. Turn it around, look through the customer end of things, and make sure maybe you have two different ones. You have to know what you're telling the customer to stare at. This particular one is bright white with a green dot in the middle. Going to sit this on your nose, rest this against your forehead. Inside here, there's a target. It goes white, green. Just stare at the green dot for me. Nothing's going to come out at you. Say that. They're worried. They just had the puff. Put them at ease. And I always like, please hold this like a pair of binoculars. And I need you to come in just almost as tight as you can. Good. Now, we talked about this in the first one, I think, when we were talking about setting up the dispensing table. Your friend, the mince, right? Okay, we both just had one as we sat down here, coming off a day of work. You never know. So your mints are in your favor in this case. Hopefully your customer has done the same. I'm going to sit this on your nose. I'm going to rest this on your forehead. Inside there's a target. It goes white and a green dot. Just need you to stare at the green dot, and nothing's going to come out at you, okay? And hold it perfect, like a pair of binoculars. I'm going to take a nice, gentle, deep breath. And if I do this, and I practice this a whole lot, what I'm doing inside, which I'll show you as best I can and at the whiteboard, I can do in one breath before breathing on my customer. Very good. Thanks. Now I've captured her PD. Let's talk about even what that is a little bit. The reason that we never, ever use a PD stick to take a PD is it's a really horrible tool for the job. It's not very accurate, and there's way too much human error possible in this. That's why this locks you in. I'll show you in a minute, as like I say, as best I can. There's a light in here. That light shines into her eye, and it creates a little tiny sparkle area, a little white star. And I'm blocking that white star with the wires that I move with these. That little spark is the corneal reflex, or where light actually passes through the eye, through the pupil, and hits the back of the eye through the visual axis, which is not always the perfect center of your pupil, which is why a corneal reflex pupilometer or an electronic device, which we've talked about and we'll talk about some more, is a far more accurate way. Again, especially when you're talking about progressives, you want the highest level of accuracy that you can. Single vision, less than minus 150, anything goes. Sure, use your PD stick, who cares, all right? But when we're getting to those pricey progressives, this is the tool for the job. So I'm going to do that one more time so you hear the language and listen to it again, and then I'll show you how we actually record it. I need to take a measurement from your eyes. Okay. I'm going to sit this on your nose. So this is going to rest against your forehead. You're going to hold it like a pair of binoculars. Inside there's a target. It's white, and then there's a green dot in the middle of the white ring. Just stare at that for me, and nothing's going to come out at you, okay?
Okay.
Lean on in for me. Perfect. Thank you. I'll show this to you. I have three numbers here. It says right, PD, and left. It says my right PD, which is a monocular PD, and we'll talk about that on the whiteboard in just a minute, is 28.5. It says my left is a 29. If I was using a binocular PD, that would be the 57.5. I would write that simply across. Now, even if for some reason you were deliberately using a binocular PD, you were making a straight top or a lined multifocal of some kind, you're still usually best recording it as a monocular and just adding the two together. And why would I say that? Because if they should call down the road and ask for it, or if they decide somewhere along the line they want to go to a progressive lens, then you already have it. You don't have to go back and do this again. So just a little bit, having something, kind of on file, so to speak, is a better way to do it. You may have noticed I have a couple of masks laying here. It is still COVID time, late in 2021. Right, thank you.
Yes.
We were just talking about it's going to be 2022 in a week or so. We know each other. We both know we are fully vaccinated and boosted, so we chose not to wear masks. Obviously, that's another thing. It comes down to your store policy, what you want to do. Personally, if I was in a store still working, you saw how close we were. It is literally mouth to mouth. I would be wearing a mask for this. There's no question with general public, for sure. Yeah, maybe even like one of the N95s or one of the higher rated ones. One thing that comes up from time to time is, do PDs change? No, not really. Even from like little kids to adults, not really. I mean, I guess I probably would do a PD at 5, 10, and 15, maybe, and that's probably about as much movement or difference in the width between your eyes that you're going to get over time. You all know social media, the biggest #1 question out there is, should I charge for PDs? There are a million views on that. My own take, not going to get into this a whole lot. If Kansi was a customer of mine for years, she said, hey, I'm buying a cheap pair online for so-and-so, whatever. Can I have my PD? I said, of course. It'd be extremely silly of me not to give that to her. She's actually explained what she was doing. Of course, I'd say, well, look, can I make those for you? And she goes, no, these are literally like $8. I'm like, okay, what are you going to do, right? Somebody calls you on the phone. They said, hey, I'm shopping online. I'm away, whatever. They're a customer, paying customer. They've been there within the last couple of years. Would I give them a PD? Sure, absolutely. Beyond that, it really does come down to what your store policy is. Believe it or not, those are the ins and outs of taking a pupillary distance. We need to hop over to the whiteboard and spend a little time there. Next time Kansi, the customer, comes by, we will do measurements for OC, and maybe we'll sneak in straight top or lined multifocals as well before we tackle progressives. I mentioned it's a little bit hard to capture what is inside here. I really can't capture the wire, but there is a picture of the target in this particular Hilco model. I know it kind of sort of seems like I'm making a big deal out of nothing, but you really do need to turn it on, look inside, and be able to describe to your customer what it is they need to look at. If not, it's a little awkward for everyone involved when they keep going, what is it I'm supposed to look at? You really need to know. It's part of your competence. It's part of your skill set. So that is what your customer is going to stare at. This, in my best attempt at drawing it out, is what you are going to see. You're going to look inside. You're going to see both of their eyes, nice and clear, nice and bright. If they're yellow, dull, hard to see, your pupillometer is no good anymore. You're going to see that little spark, that little star, that little reflection of light coming back at you. You're going to rest your fingers on those sliders. You're going to be bringing them in, and you're going to have a wire that comes across as you move this, and you're going to slide it, slide it, slide it, slide it, slide it. And when you block that little sparkle, that little star, you stop. There's your PD for your left. Doesn't matter which one you do first. You slide the right slider over, because remember, when I sat down, I drew them both all the way out. Then you're going to slide, and the wire is going to come across. The wire will come across. It blocks that star, or is in the middle of it, and you stop. There is your PD for the right. So that's what your customer sees. That's what you see and what your goal is. All right, for those of you who are observant, you may have noticed that my color of my shirt changed to red to match my slightly embarrassed face. I was editing away and I said, I'm going to take one more run through my finished video, and I realized I completely forgot to tell you the difference between a monocular and a binocular PD. A monocular PD, the preferred method, the way you always want to record it, is two numbers. It is the distance from the center line of the nose, or the bridge, if you will, or your face, and the right and left pupil centers, or corneal reflex, as individual components. So you will always have two numbers, the distance from the center line of the bridge or the nose to the right, and the center line to the left, to that corneal reflex that you'll see. It is more accurate, always going to use it for high powers, always going to use it for progressives. And if you should need to, for some reason, you can get a bi from a mono. A binocular PD, less accurate, is one number, and it is simply the distance between the pupil centers or the two corneal reflexes. You can't get a mono from a bi. You can't do that. If anybody's doing that where you work, or taking a one number reading and splitting it in half for progressives, no, that can't work, that doesn't work, that is not right. Okay. When do you use a binocular PD? Well, you could certainly get away with them in very low powers. Anything under 150, you're probably not going to have anybody die. And you use them for lined multifocals, not that we use those all that much anymore, but that is so that they look symmetrical. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about measurements for lined multifocals. So there, now I've got it. Monocular versus binocular. And of course, there's a little tiny bit more on this on the OpticianWorks website. All right, a little more stuff for PDs. You know I hate the P words. I hate the prescription word. Also hate the patient word. Opticians see customers. Doctors see patients. So whenever possible, try to use the term a customer PD. Remember, there is another video out there on that very pupillometer that I just had in my hand a few moments ago. That one. Check that out. I just mentioned locking out the distance lever on the pupillometer. So if you do that, well, what do? Well, for intermediate PD, simply take 2 away from your binocular or take 1 away from each eye from your monocular. For full near, take away 4 from a binocular or 2 from each eye in a monocular. You'll be okay. That stuff is related to convergence. Inset is related to convergence and your near and intermediate PDs. See opticianworks.com for that stuff. Really not the place to be covering that. Lots of it there. Now, I would strongly urge you to ignore the old people. You may be someplace where someone swears up and down that they are just as good with a PD stick and they do the nose thing and the look or the flashlight. Okay, just no, all right? Smile, nod your head, ignore them. Use a corneal reflex pupillometer or an electronic measuring device if you have one and you're comfortable with it. All right, you may have noticed that the readout gave me the PD to the nearest 0.5 millimeter, 0.5. For higher powers, sure, put those in there for that warm, fuzzy feeling of accuracy. You can write them down. I have asked a lot of people over the years in labs and in stores, do you enter the 5? It's like maybe 50-50 of people that do use it and don't. So, hey, it's really up to you on that 0.5. Now, I know a lot of consumers watch this, so I'm going to add this little piece. Opticians, you should kind of know this stuff. Why does any of this PD stuff matter? Well, because P is equal to HCM times D. Meaning, as power goes up, so does the need for accuracy. The idea behind a lens is placing a very specific point on that lens directly in front of your visual axes most of the time, right? If you are not right on top of that, if you're a little bit off one way or the other, related to the power of that lens, it can create prism, which can create problems. It's not a given, but it can, okay? As power increases, so does the need for accuracy. And of course, anytime you're doing a progressive, you want a good monocular PD from a CRP or an electronic measuring device. Thank you so much for watching. If you are watching us on Facebook, please give us a like. Watching us on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down there in the corner and make sure that every lens you're perfectly aligning to your customer PD comes from Laramie K, and I will see you again next week.